Authorities say he started a wildfire to lure firefighters to a rural area in northern Idaho where he shot at them. 2 firefighters were killed, a third seriously injured. Investigators have identified that shooter, and he has ties to Arizona. That's on this edition of the Arizona's Family Investigates podcast.
Taking you behind the investigation, this is the Arizona's Family Investigates podcast.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the pod. I'm Amy Cutler, joined by senior investigative producer Cody Lillich. We looked into the suspect, 20-year-old Wess Roley, and his background.
Yeah, and first we should start with what happened in Idaho, the tragic events up there. Authorities say Roley started that fire on a mountain in rural northern Idaho near the Washington state line. They tell us that first responders briefly interacted with him and asked him to move his vehicle, but they had no idea what would be coming next. About 40 minutes into that response to a fire is when investigators say 20-year-old Wess Roley started shooting at the firefighters. 2 firefighters, Frank Harwood and John Morrison, were killed, and a third firefighter is injured and still recovering.
Authorities say they used cell phone data to determine his location. His body was found along with a firearm. They tell us it appeared he shot himself. Kootenai County Sheriff Robert Norris says they are still investigating, but explained they do not have a motive.
We have not been able to find any manifesto. We have not been able to inventory the vehicle, although people that have seen the vehicle do believe it appeared as if he was living in the vehicle.
So that got people starting to look at who is this suspect, who would do such a thing and start this fire and practically ambush firefighters. So investigators and even us in the media have been, kind of retracing the family tree. And in an interview, Roley's grandfather, I believe it was his paternal grandfather in Oklahoma, says that Roley was living on his own and that he appeared to be doing well there in Idaho. The grandfather explained that Roley actually wanted to be a firefighter and had possibly applied to a department in Idaho.
Things he's excited about and wanted to do in life. And, I know that he wanted to be a fireman. He was trying to be a forestry fireman. I'm pretty sure he had. He told me that he had talked to the local fire department there.
That was Dale Roley, Wess Roley's grandfather, talking on the phone with a local news station about what he had last known about his grandson. The sheriff in northern Idaho said that they are aware that Wess Roley might have applied with a department, and they're looking into that if it had anything to do with what unfolded on that mountain. Criminologist Casey Jordan spoke to CNN about how Roley's ambition to be a firefighter or possible recent application to a department might be something that set him off.
So we know that sometimes arsonists are volunteer firefighters or firefighter wannabes, people who have applied to become firefighters and been rejected. And one wonders, did he actually apply to become a forest firefighter? I will be very interested to know if there are any applications out there. And was he rejected, or was he just feeling down on his luck and hopeless? And use the fire setting not to feel just powerful, although there's a lot of psychology there, but also to use it as a bait trap for firefighters, which he's alleged to have shot and killed 2 of. Maybe it was revenge. We will find out more as we piece together his recent weeks in Idaho.
And that's exactly what the sheriff's office and authorities from many agencies are doing now, going back and looking at Roley's previous actions and movements before this tragic incident unfolded there in northern Idaho. The only recent thing shared by law enforcement that we know of was a photo Roley reportedly posted himself to Instagram. This appeared in an Instagram story, so it's one of those that disappears. But he's seen wearing camo and is seen having ammunition along his belt line. And in the post, he attached the song Hunter by Bjork. Overall, the sheriff said they have had very minor run-ins with Roley before this deadly shooting.
The Kootenai County Sheriff's Office and Coeur d'Alene Police Department, we've had 5 interactions with Roley, and of those 5 interactions, we've had 3. Coeur d'Alene Police had 2. They're very, very minor in nature. They had to do with more trespassing. He was trespassing at a location. He was asked to leave, and he cooperated. We had some welfare checks on Roley, and very, very minor. We don't show any criminal history for Roley.
So that, again, the Kootenai County Sheriff, they're going through and kind of unveiling that, they have a lot of questions left to be answered and nothing really evident that would indicate anything like what unfolded in Idaho. And we searched here in Arizona, and we had not been able to find any criminal history of him here either.
And we should point out, as this investigation is still underway, they really kind of zoom in on every little thing, every interaction to really sort of piece together exactly what happened, but also determine if there was something, a red flag that might have been raised in some way that they could have stopped what unfolded from happening.
Yeah, and that's one of the first things that usually, we've unfortunately had too many of these incidents unfold where it's a mass casualty incident, and that's one of the first things is law enforcement looks back, okay, how many interactions have we had with this individual? So not even arrest, but interactions. So anytime a law enforcement officer interacts with someone, they document it, they make a note of it so that if something were to happen down the line, they have this documentation showing, officer or deputy so-and-so interacted with him or, and it was just something minor that didn't result in an arrest or even a citation. So it's just going back and seeing what his movements and actions were to kind of fill in this timeline that is very bare at this time.
I also want to mention that Instagram post because it was interesting. The sheriff sort of mentioned that at the top of the press conference, shared this photo that they had found of the suspect. And I thought that was pretty interesting because on its face, it didn't look like anything, that really stood out to me. Yes, he has his firearm showing in the song, but they made a big point. I wonder what stood out to you about that.
Knowing what happened in Idaho, it's chilling because, and we'll get into what we found and uncovered about him as well, but you see in our research a high school student, a recent high school graduate, moving to a different state. But in that photo, you see, in knowing the end result, you see something completely different. So if what happened on that mountain did not occur and you showed me that photo, I would think, I grew up in a rural area in Texas. If you would have showed me that photo, I would have just thought that it was someone out in the woods going hunting, literally. But putting that together with what we know unfolded on that mountain so far, it's chilling.
Yeah, it really is. So now the question becomes, how did his family end up here in Phoenix? Because they do have some ties to Arizona. Now, according to court records, his parents moved to Phoenix from Germany. His father was a cavalry scout with the Army prior to that. We learned that as part of a divorce filing in which his mother gained full custody of Roley, just 2 months later, she petitioned for an order of protection against Roley's father, stating that he was verbally threatened that he would be waiting outside with a sniper rifle and threatening to burn the place down. The only thing stopping him from doing that is prison.
Yeah, so that's another aspect of, and the criminologist also talked about this, is, his upbringing. This happened here in Arizona as he was growing up here in the Valley. Not his entire childhood, but in his later years and arguably more formative years of being a child and a teenager. He would eventually go on to graduate from a school here in Phoenix, North Phoenix Prep, 2 years ago. So how did he get from here in Phoenix to Idaho? We were able to find a Facebook post from his mother 2 years ago, we believe right after he graduated from high school from North Phoenix Prep. where she was posting he was leaving the airport and going to live with his father in Idaho. It's the post from 2023. His mom wrote that she's proud and excited of him and that he's going to go work for his father's tree company. We learned that he had worked for his father's tree company and also another tree company he was working for at the time of the shooting. Roley's father told a CNN reporter outside his home in Idaho that he was actually not close with his son and had not seen him since a family gathering last year. After the shooting in Idaho, Roley's father posted on Facebook to pay tribute to what he called the fallen heroes of June 29th, 2025. In the post, he writes, "I have no words. I'm so sorry for the families." His grandfather shared that post along with the message, "My condolences to all the family of these brave first responders. Godspeed."
And it's important as we look back at his parents' relationship here. There were some court filings. There was an order of protection. Important to note that his father denied that there was any violence there, that there was any wrongdoing, but his mother had full custody of him for a period of time. And we don't really know what changed, why specifically she decided that she should send him to live in Idaho, or if it was something that Roley had wanted to do himself. So we still got a lot of questions and wonder sort of the role that might have played in all of this.
Well, and that was recently after he had just graduated. I believe it was within days to weeks of graduating. It was in May 2023. So he had just turned 18, just graduated from high school, we believe, and then makes the move.
Yeah, and Roley's mother, important to note also, still lives here in Phoenix. In response to what happened through a family attorney, she sent us this statement. At this time, we, the family of Wess Roley, would like to offer our most heartfelt condolences to the families of those whose lives were taken and to the community. We do not understand why this happened or how this came about. Our hearts and spirits are broken for the lost and hurting, and for our own loss as well. We intend to fully cooperate with authorities in seeking answers.
And I know that the authorities in Idaho said that, the family is being cooperative, and by all accounts, it seems like they were caught off guard by all of this. There wasn't anything that was glaring as something was wrong that we hear so often in these cases. The only thing that kind of recently happened that we've been able to uncover is that the grandfather hadn't talked to him in a while. It had been a few weeks, but he believed it was because he lost his phone. So just kind of a lack of communication there for a little bit. Who knows what happened in those few weeks? And it will be interesting to see whether, any of this reporting of him applying at a fire or a forestry department, whether that application was acted upon, and if that had anything to do with all of this. But Amy, you stopped by here in Phoenix, the home connected to the mom and the stepfather, and spoke with the neighbors. What did you find out in that neighborhood?
Yeah, so I spoke with several neighbors that live just around their home, and they had said that they really were quiet, kept to themselves. We hear that time and again, but it was interesting because none of them knew that she had a son, let alone that son was in Idaho. So it also kind of begs the question, were they out of contact? I mean, when the last time that his mother spoke with him, how close were they? Another thing that sort of stood out to me too was, so the grandfather says that he lost his cell phone, but then we learned from investigators that they used his cell phone to track them, to track him down. So you wonder, maybe had it really just been a couple weeks that the grandfather hadn't spoken to him, or how did that all come about?
Well, and just in the grand scheme of things, the grandfather, I believe, is in Oklahoma. So, I mean, almost across the country, literally. And compared to where his immediate family is, I mean, you have the father there in the immediate area of Idaho, and then mother and stepfather down here in Phoenix. So, what was the communication like there, and what happened in the interim to basically cause this to happen.
Yeah, and we know in this situation, both of the parents remarried. It appears that the father may have some some younger kids. So, and he was Roley was no longer working for his father's company. So you wonder if there was sort of some kind of falling out there as well.
Yeah, because that was the interesting thing, is that, the whole move to Idaho was to go live with either live directly with the father or live closer to the father and work for his tree company. Basically, the family has a history of tree services and arbor-related industries. So that was the whole intention of moving up there. And then to find out the fact from the reporting up in Idaho that the father says that he's kind of not heard from his son in a year or more. So that was really surprising to find that out. And it widens the timeline even more of the unknown of what's happened in that past year.
Yeah, and the fact that he was transient, they said, living out of his car. Because, there's some reports that he had a roommate at some point in the last 6 months. So had he lost his job, or what had led up to that too? And
that was one of the interactions that law enforcement had mentioned was they called it a trespassing call. But they hinted that he was basically in his vehicle at a business and had basically overstayed his welcome, was there longer than a car should be parked there. It sounded like they were inferring that he was, sleeping there. And so they told him to move along, and he did. So that was one of the interactions, at least one, that he had with local authorities that were trying to piece into this timeline.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how all of this plays out sort of moving forward. A lot of unanswered questions. Hopefully answers will come to reveal just what would cause a person from Phoenix, 2 years removed from high school, to shoot and kill firefighters on a mountain in Idaho. We will continue to follow the latest developments and bring them to you on our news app. Thanks for joining us for this edition of the Arizona's Family Investigates podcast.
The Arizona's Family Investigates podcast, hosted by Amy Cutler and produced by Cody Lillich, and a production of Arizona's Family 3 TV, CBS 5, and azfamily.com in Phoenix, Arizona.